All right, guys, let's start talking about the Arab Spring here. And let's start off with a video. Let's get this to work. Maybe make it full screen here in a second. There we go.
It's been a year since a young man immolated himself in a backwater town of Tunisia, igniting a revolution there that soon spread to Egypt, Libya, Bahrain, Syria, and Yemen. It's taken on various names: the Arab Spring, Arab Revolts, Arab Revolution, but taken together, it's represented one of the most critical and decisive chapters in the history of the modern Arab world. Each revolution had its defining characteristics, its own personalities, its own ideologies, wrestling with what identity would emerge in the wake of a dictator's fall. After Tunisia's dictator, Zain al-Abidine Ben Ali, fell, eventually going into exile in Saudi Arabia, Egypt's President Hosni Mubarak was next. Youths came together, most spectacularly in Tahrir Square, in the heart of Cairo, the Arab world's greatest capital. Scenes of young men and women tapping away at their keyboards, organizing themselves and organizing the society around them. Tahrir Square itself became an emblem, a symbol of what the generation was trying to achieve. There was an uprising in Bahrain, eventually crushed by a Sunni Muslim monarchy unwilling to give reform to its Shiite Muslim majority. In Yemen, months passed as President Ali Abdullah Saleh resisted demands that he leave power, and even now, after a deal was reached, his presence still hovers over the country. In Libya, what was closest to a civil war, rebels fought with the help of NATO's military, Colonel Gaddafi's 40 years of dictatorship. Colonel Gaddafi himself eventually met a bloody demise, but the problems that beset Libya are far from resolved. As bloody as Libya's civil war proved, it has paled before Syria's. There, a family dictatorship of 4 decades has proven a remarkable resilience in the face of protests that erupted back in mid-March. The people themselves articulated a much more indigenous vocabulary, a vocabulary that was entrenched in notions of social justice, freedom, democracy, and dignity. Those are the aspirations that began in December and that have yet to reach their fruition. The challenges remain vast. Islamists have only begun their experiment with democracy. Societies like Libya have yet to prove that they can reconcile after so many decades of dictatorship. An older Arab world has come to an end. An order that once anchored the region from the Atlantic coast to the Persian Gulf has crumbled. But amid all the challenges, the fears of civil war, the worries about chaos, there remains an optimism out there that societies, after so many generations, finally have the chance to build themselves on their own terms.
All right, so this is a quick overview of what the Arab Spring is. So let's look a little more in depth as to what was going on. And then we're going to look at how the U.S. was involved in all this too. So why is the U.S. even getting its hands dirty with what's going on the other side of the world? So one of the reasons why the U.S. got involved is because they thought that supporting the Arabs in the quest for democracy would be beneficial to both the Arab world and the West, right? We think democracy is great, it works well for us, and it should be everywhere else. And not only if there's democracy in other places, that means there's not room for other totalitarian regimes or communism or other less cooperative governments. So we helped assist the fall of Mohammed Mubarak in Egypt. The guy was pretty resilient. He survived 6 assassination attempts prior to that. He came to power back in '81, and then after all this unrest during the Arab Spring, he decided to choose not to run for re-election. Sure, I decided I've had enough. It'd be someone else's turn. Basically, if he didn't, bad things are going to happen. And again, elections are kind of a joke in Egypt. He was an oppressive dictator who held control of the country, which kind of works is that he kept all the other kind of crazy people at bay. But if you disagreed or dissented with what he had to say, usually you end up jailed or tortured. And he tried to control the media. So if you don't know what's going on in the world or even the country, then you're a little more cooperative. And so that was one of his tools, was to make sure he was in control of what was being said about the government and the country. And again, if you were any kind of if you opposed any of his policies, you end up seeing not so nice side of them. So eventually he was replaced by Mohamed Morsi. They had an election after he stepped down. However, the only real choice was Morsi. Since Egypt wasn't really set up for democracy and free elections, the really only governing group or group that had any organization was the Muslim Brotherhood. And since that was kind of the only option. However, the Muslim Brotherhood is basically an extremist terrorist group, And this guy Morsi didn't rule much differently than Mubarak. And so the people were all excited about bringing a new guy in, and he kind of did the same thing. He was kind of ruthless. He controlled the media, and he also really took care of anybody who maybe opposed him. So currently now we're like, well, that didn't work out. And so maybe I got a worse guy in charge of the government. At least Mubarak we can work with a little bit now. Morsi is even less sympathetic to the United States. But now currently to this day, this new leader, El-Sisi is now the elected Egyptian president. He stepped down from the military. He was the military leader. And so he's been ruling the last couple of years. And we just sold them some F-16s, just like the Blue Angels. They kind of help support him and kind of repair relations there in Egypt. So we like to have allies and people who are friendly. So we feel if we help them out, eventually maybe they can help us out if we need something down the road. Let's see. And then also, we didn't stop in Egypt. Now, Libya was having some problems. Their dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, was having some problems. He's been in charge since 1969. He thought he was one of the greatest guys to walk the earth. He wrote books. He acted like a celebrity. One thing he did do is he took over the oil production of the country. Prior to 1969, other countries governed the oil fields. And he's like, wait a second, this is our country. This is our oil. We should be in charge, which does make sense. Which brought a lot of money into Libya because now they are producing and controlling the oil within their borders. However, again, he was pretty ruthless and suppressed anybody who opposed him. So during the Arab Spring, when people were like, wait a second, what's going on here in Libya? This guy got to go. And so the United States like, all right, great, we'll help you get rid of another dictator, thinking we can bring in somebody who's a little more sympathetic to Western ideas. However, in Libya, now it's just kind of free for all to a degree. There's not a lot of stability, and so Ansar al-Sharia is another jihadist militia who took advantage of the lack of control in the country, and so now they are kind of running things, and they are another terrorist extremist group operating outside of Libya. So in Libya, in the aftermath of the jihadist massacre in France, much of the international focus has been on Yemen, Iraq, and Syria as the planning and training centers for al-Qaeda and ISIS. However, lots of much of the Western discussion has been the central threat located in Libya, where al-Qaeda groups maintain bases and where the ISIS has been growing in strength. Middle Eastern security officials speaking to this website that I found says Libya is quickly taking the place of Yemen as the main headquarters for some of the world's most dangerous international terrorist organizations. The U.S. and NATO in 2011 disposed of the regime of Muammar Gaddafi, providing vast quantities of weaponry to rebels there. Some of the weapons reportedly fell in the hands of terrorist organizations. Islamic extremists control large swaths of Libya. So we helped arm the rebels in Libya to overthrow Gaddafi, and now they're using those weapons to train up extremists and radicals to then spread fear and terror across the world. So the weapons we used to help overthrow Gaddafi now not only has created a kind of nice place for them to train up more crazy radical people, but now we are using the weapons that we gave them as well. So it kind of backfired in a lot of ways. The role of social media is interesting here. Again, one of the things both these dictators used was the control of the media, but social media is hard to control. It's peer-to-peer interactions and just text messages. And what happened was the guy in Tunisia, when he set himself on fire, the video went viral. People were like, wait, why is he doing that? What's going on? Oh, wait, that's happening there. Maybe bad things are happening here. Oh, wait, I heard this guy got mistreated by this guy. And so all of a sudden it started spreading. People were like, well, we need to do something about this. And so they step up and started protesting against the government. So during the week of Egyptian President Mubarak's resignation, for example, tweets went from about 2,000 a day to 230,000 a day. Viral videos had 5.5 million views, and Facebook was just blowing up. So just an example, just during the week of where Mubarak resigned, and just all the social media stuff has just gone out of control. Social media not only allowed protesters to organize and put pressure on authoritarian governments, but it also allowed their ideas to spread to neighboring countries as well. So what didn't just happen in Tunisia, it spread over to Egypt and Libya and Yemen and Bahrain and Syria and Iraq. It just kept going because, again, the internet is everywhere. It's not contained just in one country. So these brutal images of opposition, repression, and attempts to block the internet websites really inflame the situation. So these images are floating around, and then in different countries, they tried to kind of shut down the internet or at least block Facebook, and that just made people even more frustrated. Egypt's government tried to cut off the internet and all mobile phones altogether, which was people like, wait a second, you're doing what? So now not only could protesters not follow the events on social media, they're like, okay, I'm going to go see what's going on myself. So it actually had the opposite effect. Instead of quieting people down, people were coming to see because now they couldn't follow it. on the internet.